Well, I'm going to have to do a video on one of my other occupations, and that is being a knife dealer. As you can see, this is a special collection I have right here in the foyer of our home. And it usually gets quite the attention when new people arrive. I don't think the average person has a knife collection right in the front foyer of their homes, but hey, that's just one of the ways I'm different. Yeah, I'm going to have to include these knives in one of our future videos. Thanks for joining us today in our adventure today. I'm Dr. Russ, and if you're like me, you enjoy the passion of air guns. Part of that passion is enjoying them 12 months of the year, unlike powder rifles and guns, which typically are only used in the fall. Our motto is to stay safe, stay sharp, and silent. We have almost 12,000 subscribers, but we've had hits from over 1 million people over the past 3 years, all over the world. And it thrills Dr. Paula and I to be included as one of your go-to resources. So if you share our passion for air guns, be sure you give us a thumbs up. If you have a question about air guns or this video, put it in the comments section. I answer all the comments. Sometimes I have to go to some sources of mine to get the actual answers, but your question will be answered. Sometimes it's just a compliment. I appreciate those too. And probably the most important thing is that if you want to be notified when our 2 or 3 videos come out each month, be sure you subscribe. Well, last week we covered the Gamo swarm group of 10X air guns. If you haven't seen that video, we covered the Gamo brand and the 3 generations and which guns were available with each generation. A lot of confusion. And then Gamo loves this word whisper, which they've copyrighted, and putting it in and taking it back out added some more confusion. If you have some questions about those Gamo, you'll want to see the video before this one. All you have to do is click onto that little round circle picture of me, and that'll show you our whole channel. And I believe the very first video available to you is this Gamo 10X comparison that we talked about. But today, we're going to be talking about the other 2 large companies. There's Gamo, there's Crosman, and there's Hatsan. There's a lot of good companies out there, and I own a lot of air guns from them all. But there are 3 really big ones. And this segment of the air gun market, between the springers and the air pistons and the brake barrels and the 10, even 12X comparisons, is really quite big. It's probably the largest segment of air gunners out there, and I believe in brake barrels with these multiple magazines that allow you to put 10 or 12 pellets aside and ready. I think it's a great survivor gun. You lose your power. Kind of nice to be able to just pump it up and have a real decent shooter. Gamo did that. I just want to make sure our viewers know which Gamo. A number of months ago I came out with this program called, this video called 75 Deal Breakers. And I said, why don't you just highlight the 10 or 12 of the 75 that are deal breakers for you, so that the next time when you purchase a gun, it isn't just which air gun looks great or which one's being promoted the hardest. The question is, does that gun have any deal breakers on it? This list of 75 I use myself, and it's a free report when you order $3 worth or $5 worth of our logo stickers. so it's cheap. Now then, today let's talk about the Crosman and Hatsan 10X, but when they talk 17 caliber, it's 12X. First of all, let's get our names right. While the Gamo Swarm has 3 generations and all types of guns within that generation, that's not what we're finding with Crosman and Hatsan. Crosman comes out with this break barrel with this magazine. Just one magazine, just one, a couple of rifles here, but it's all, if you will, generation 1. Notice, if you will, I was about to mount a scope here, and you can see that there's a little dimple here on this and a dimple hole here, so that when you mount on a Crosman, you're going to want that scope mount to fit into that hole, and that just makes it that much more rigid, if you will. We're dealing with this magazine, and only this magazine, as it comes into this point here. Here's a bad point. It always stands up. If you remember in the Gamo, only generation 1 did they stand up, and in generations 2 and 3 it laid down. Well, we're in, if you will, at generation 1. This gun still has some pluses, it has some minuses, but this and the Hatsan, which is called the Speedfire, so Crosman Magfire, Hatsan Speedfire, they have stand-up magazines. Well, here's a plus for the Crosman. It has iron sights, where we have trouble finding that on only one model of the Gamo series. I have something more I want to say about scopes in a minute. I hate scopes. I love all of these rifles, but these scopes are cheap, and they need to be short scopes to work right on the guns. But I'll come up with a solution. My dad taught me, he said, don't bring me a problem unless you've got at least a solution. It may not be the right solution, and I may shut you down on it, but don't come with a problem. I've just brought a problem. I'll bring you the solution in just a moment. Okay, we don't have any generations yet on this Crosman and Hatsan, but I've listed the Crosman data here. I've listed the Hatsan here. And probably the biggest problem is that magazine is sticking up. So we have to have high mounts on both guns to get it up so the scope looks over the top of that magazine. And in this case, well, actually both cases, they do still have manual sights. They both have adjustable triggers. I like that. So we can set the trigger for our finger. I think I told you that in competitive shooting, I had handguns that would go off literally with 1 pound of pressure and just thinking about it. I think about it, boom. Think about it, boom. It isn't any of this, I'm pulling this long trigger back. That's what you want on competitive guns. Whether you want it for your hunting or your backyard friendly gun, that's your business. But first of all, we have to have triggers that are adjustable. With a scope and rail, they're just like the Gamo. We have 11 millimeter rails. Now that's something that's important when you get a scope on it. We want to make sure you have mounts that mount to an 11 millimeter, because the traditional scope rail is 20 on powder guns. So a lot of scopes, etc., come set up to go on a 20 millimeter rail. And when we're talking air guns, these air guns, it's 11. Crosman brings out a 3x9 40. That's exactly what the Hatsan brought out. The safety on a Crosman is manual. When I want a safety on, I hit the button. When I want it off, I hit the button. Not so with Hatsan. Hatsan loves this automatic safety. When you put a round in the gun, the safety goes on and it stays on until you take it off. That sounds pretty good until you've got this animal, this critter in sight, the target, the bullseye, and you're pulling and pulling, and the gun won't fire. Why? Because the automatic safety is still on. The weight. Well, these Crosman guns, and there's three, a Mission, an Ultra, and an Extreme, and they're all in this 9 to 10 pound category. But unlike Gamo and the heavier weight, yes, you will have sling studs, and you can mount a sling to it. Hatsan lives up to its reputation of always having a heavy gun, a well-made steel breech, and you'll really want a sling when you start carrying that one through the woods. The mag capacity here is 12 rounds, not 10. But if we go up to the 22 caliber, it'll hold 10. And that's true of both of these guns that are now going for a piece of this market that Gamo has enjoyed. I'm not talking too much about purpose here. On the 10 or 12, we certainly can shoot targets all day long. But there's always an argument when we say 17 caliber and 22 caliber are for small game only. It probably should be said that if you want to humanely take critters and game, and with the 1 shot, 2 shots at most, you may want to get on up into a 25 caliber. And none of these break barrels offer 25. It's 17 or 22. Now, I've had people write in and say they shot a deer, shot it in the eye at 100 yards. Okay, I'm sure that happens. But if you shot at 100 deer, how many would fall like that with a small caliber gun? Yes, the triggers are 2-stage. So we have 1 stage, and then the 2nd stage is where we actually fire the gun. Both guns have that. And Hatsan has a name, they call it their Quattro trigger, and it works, it's good. Fixed sights, yes and yes. Gamo's has one gun, the Fusion, that has the fixed sights, and Hatsan has something nice here. The sights flip up, and they're fiber optics. That makes a fixed sight pretty nice when you have that fiber optic dot in the middle. Let's talk about silent. They both have suppressors. They both have moderated barrels. With the Crosman, it brings that loudness down to what we call a level 2, which is low. Hatsan has theirs in a low 2 or a moderate 3. When does it jump from low 2 to moderate 3? Well, remember, one thing on sound is related to velocity. And when you're shooting 17 caliber, you have a faster pellet. It's going out that barrel faster. It makes a bigger bang. And so even with a moderated barrel, even with a silencer, one of their guns, the one with 17 caliber, only gets that 3. But notice here, when we look, here's your moderated barrel. Remember, a barrel really, unlike a powder gun, the barrel is inside this barrel. And it has spacers in here that helps quiet this gun. Gamo will have a silencer on a couple of their guns, and it's only 2-chamber. Well, if you get a good suppressor from, say, Donnie FL or one of those people, they got more than just 2 spaces inside. But that's what they are using here. They're trying to meet a budget, if you will, and keep this gun under $200, $300. And so they'll have a suppressor that I don't really rank with what I can get on the outside. But that's what we have. I have I'll bring up the barrel length in just a second, because that can be confusing. So we have this. Now notice that the cocking effort is 32 pounds. With Hatsan, it's 30. If you'll remember over here at Gamo, it's 41 pounds if we're doing the Magnum gun. And what was it? It was 30 pounds if we're talking about their others. Crosman comes up at 32. The piston type. Well, there's 3 Crosman guns, a Mission, an Ultra, and Extreme. 2 of these use the nitro piston, but their Extreme gun uses the nitro piston Elite. Now, let's just talk about pistons for a moment versus springers. The piston always allows for a smoother cocking action. There's no spring torque, so the scope doesn't go through this double action that a springer gives it. It just has one action to the rear. That helps scopes, it helps you. There's no spring fatigue in a piston because there's no spring. You can leave it cocked for long periods of time, it lasts longer, and in cold weather, springers will shoot less, but piston guns maintain their accuracy in cold weather. And often when we go hunting, we're out in the early morning or late day and it's colder. Now, while Crosman calls theirs a nitro piston or a nitro piston Elite, Hatsan's name is a Vortex gas piston. They're all pistons, they all work. The velocities are very similar to Gamo's with Crosman. 1,300 feet per second if we're shooting 17, a 22 caliber is 975. Over here at Hatsan, they hit the 1,300, but the 22 caliber they say is 1,000. I don't know. Hatsan probably is the most honest air gun when it comes to velocities. Probably Gamo's the least, and Crosman somewhere in the middle. So when I look at these speeds, I really feel much better if I can run my pellets with a device that allows me to determine the speed and find out for myself. But you can see they're very comparable here. Now, the moment we bring lead into the picture, boy, we lose 300 feet per second, much like Gamo here, and the 22 caliber loses almost 200 feet. But 800 is still a decent speed. Hatsan's saying the same thing. 1,000 feet per second versus 1,300 when we use lead, and 800 if we're upping it to a 22 caliber. Let's talk about barrel length. I've said in a number of my videos that I really want an air gun. It's one of my deal breakers, and as long as it has a 20-inch barrel. I had some guys write that because the Gamo does have 20-inch barrel. Let me have a 19-inch, 20-inch. This is the bone collector. But they were thinking the barrel ended somewhere here. It was only a 10-inch, and that all this was suppressor or something, and it was not a barrel. No, Gamo does have 19 and 20-inch barrels. The barrel goes clear up into the suppressors and moderators. And there's something there called an air stripper. Kind of looks like the ends of this, but that causes air to come back down inside this moderated barrel and keep it muffled, if you will. Unfortunately, while Gamo can keep those 19 and 20-inch barrels, Crosman and Hatsan do not. As you can see, Crosman has a 15-inch barrel, and Hatsan has a 14 and a half. Now people say, well, I've got this and it's accurate. But what you're looking for is accurate at what range? Oh, 30 yards, 40 yards, sure. Almost every gun, regardless, even a pistol can be very accurate with a 6-inch barrel. But are they accurate at 75 and even 100? Do they have a nice tight group when it's that long? This, even though I've bought them, I'm not that happy with these shorter barrels. But that's because I've shot competitively, and you want as long a barrel as possible when you're doing that. Warranty. Well, if you look back over here with Gamo, Their Whisper was 1 year, their Maxim is 3 years, the Mag is 5-year warranties. And yet the mechanics there are still pretty much the same. And I wondered why. Why would they go from 1 year to 5 year? And I found out the answer. It's that price. When they sell their more expensive guns, they feel like they can extend that warranty and be comfortable with it. Well, Crosman says 5 years. But an interesting thing in the small print is that's the gun only. They don't want to warranty their scope or any other accessories on the gun. Hatsan, 1 year, 1 year. And that's it. Let's look at prices. The Mission, which I kind of like to compare with the Gamo's Whisper, which was $150 when it first came out. But Whispers now are $200 guns. And so Crosman brought out their Mission about a year ago at $190. The Ultra, $235, and the Extreme at $250. Where Hatsan just brought out their Speedfire, their one and only Speedfire, at $225. But here's some green ink down, some small. What I like about the Hatsan is you get 2 mags. Well, you know, mags can be expensive, and when you come up with 2 mags instead of 1, that really helps this price. And they are definitely coming in under the Gamo prices of Generation 3. Some things you need to know about the Crosman. That Mission, which is their cheapest gun, has no adjustments on that butt stock. The Ultra does, but you get the butt stock, which is adjustable, and you get that soft touch, you know, those rubber inserts on the front of the rifle and the back. It's not just for design, it's kind of nice to have that touch, that soft touch. But their Extreme also allows the cheek to rise up, because again, you're going to need high mounts for the Crosman and the Hatsan, because it has a stand-up magazine. And so the more we want to lift it up, that's when I want a cheek riser that can lift my head up to that position as well. So a little simpler information on the Crosman and the Hatsan compared to what we had to go through in our last video about the numerous Gamos. They've really made it a confusing marketplace. They don't know when to use the word Whisper or not because it's such a popular word. And they wanted to keep a $149 gun. It ultimately got up to about $185. But then they brought out the Evo. And that Evo is really a cheaper gun than the Whisper, trying to come back in at that $150 to catch some sales that they felt they'd lost when they brought out these more expensive. Something I wanted to bring out was on this bone collector here. I have struck a deal with a company named CV Life. They have a big warehouse in Vegas. They're a global company. But a gal there by the name of Jill Blake has brought out a shorter barrel, a shorter scope, and that's what we need. You know, look at this Gamo right here to the right, and I'm having trouble. If the gun's cocked, I don't have the trouble, but when it's straight out, you have trouble putting scope caps on because this rifle scope is too long. CV Life has a number of short scopes, but my goodness, here is a short scope with a red dot and a red laser, and the whole thing's like $85, $90. And our viewers, if you use the right code, which is Russ, R-U-S-S, 15, Russ 15, you'll find it at the end of your order. You put that code in, you get 15%, so a $100 item is only $85. I like that. So here's a place for you to get scopes, and if you just want a plain Jane scope like this, variable, nice optics, gosh, they got them $40–50, and you may want to get that. Just be sure that if you're getting it for a brake barrel, you're getting the 11mm sights for a rail of 11mm, not 20. Here's here's a Gamo over here that has a scope. I got it back enough, but look at how far back it comes back out over here, and that's way too much. Notice here, about 1.5 inches. Your eye is about 2 inches, and this length works real well. You know, this scope was like $85, minus 15% off. What this is a battery, one of those like hearing aid batteries. It's about the size of a nickel. What does this do? This lights up the crosshairs and inside the scope for early morning and late evening shots. Here's the battery for this red dot. And if you're seeing a running target, you really want a red dot scope. You don't want a regular. Trying to find an animal running, scurrying around inside a scope, once it starts its movement, it's difficult. On a red dot, not at all. And then I like a laser for self-defense. Kind of nice to walk through the house and you can see this red dot going everywhere, and so can a burglar. And he says, do I really need to be here? What's this red dot going around? They know what it means. The magazines for the Hatsan and Crosman are in that $15 category. Not true on the Gamo anymore. I think they were $15 in the very, very, very beginning. But 15, they went to 30, and if you want them for that mag, third generation, it's $45. But for Hatsan and Crosman, 15. I hope all this can put some information together for you so that you can decide which of these guns has the least deal breakers for you. They all had good manuals to get in and find out how to make this gun work safely. That was important. Other than that, if you found that this was a helpful video, give us a thumbs up. If you've got questions, I think I have the answers. Leave a comment. But most important, subscribe. That way you're going to get our next video. And I think, I'm serious, I think our next video is the most important one I've ever made. It talks about things on barrels you don't have any clue of, or I don't think you have any clue of. It's very important that you get information on how to make a cheap barrel good and to leave an expensive barrel alone. Trying to get those groups from this size to this size at 75, 85, 100 yards. That's our goal. Until then, give us a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and keep watching our videos so that you know that what it is to be safe, what it is to be sharp, and my favorite, what is it to be silent.